guys, and welcome to my October wrap up. Now, October was a very busy month, but I did manage to read 10 books for Slayerfest, so I'm very, very happy with that because that was how many I wanted to read in the first place. So I'm just going to get right into it and tell you everything I managed to read. The first thing I read was Sandman Volume 4, which heralded the return of Lucifer and the introduction of Mazikeen, which had me so excited because I'm a massive fan of the TV show Lucifer, which is based off the Sandman comics, and I love seeing Lucifer in hell in these comics and how he feels about hell and everything else was so interesting. I love seeing Mazikeen for the first time and how they all interact with Dream, but the one thing that got me about these comics, or specifically this comic, is the fact that I'm used to the TV show canon now, which is very much loosely based off of the Sandman comics. So Lucifer meets Cain in this comic and then doesn't recognise him in the TV show. So I was a bit like, that's a bit odd, but it took a while to get used to, but after that I was really into it again and I gave it 4 stars. The next thing I read was Death Note Volume 1, which was quite scary going into because I've never read a manga before and I was really worried that I was going to get very confused, but it only took me a couple of pages and I was right into it. I loved the storyline and I actually coped quite well with the manga layout, which I was expecting me to really struggle with, so I was very happy about that to start with. And also Death Note as a series was really interesting. I loved the first volume and I will definitely be continuing on with the series in the new year because right now I am focusing on getting through the rest of my comic collection and obviously my book collection. But in the new year I will definitely be continuing on with Death Note and other mangas as well, and I gave this 4 stars. Then I was a little bit of a child and read There's an Elf in Your Book by Tom Fletcher because I am a McFly fangirl and Tom writes a book, I buy the book, I love the book. It's just generally the way things go here. So this was a really sweet Christmas story, really interactive, really cute. Really enjoyed this one. I definitely recommend it for people who have toddlers and just generally young kids. It's a really fun read and I gave it 5 stars. Next I read The Christmasaurus and the Winter Witch, which is also done by Tom, and I thoroughly enjoyed this one. I didn't think I would, like I didn't with The Christmasaurus, because obviously it's about Christmas and I am the grinchiest human being on the planet, but I still did really enjoy this. I loved how it built more on the world of the Christmasaurus and the Christmas story and everything else. I love the involvement of all the different characters and how it gave bigger backstories to characters we only saw a little bit of and stuff like this. It was absolutely fantastic and it was a 5-star read. Definitely. I then went on to a book called The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter, and I think I've found a new favourite book. Not a favourite book of all time, but definitely now it's up there as one of my favourite books, possibly in my top 10 now, because it was amazing. Because it follows the story of Mary Jekyll after her mother dies, because she finds out her mother was paying money to look after Hyde in a girls' home. When she goes to the girls' home to find out exactly what's going on here, she finds Diana Hyde, who is actually sort of her sister, because obviously Jekyll and Hyde were the same person. Though they don't really know that, they're still trying to figure that out. And over the course of the book, they find other girls like themselves who are also experimented on by other famous scientists like Frankenstein. You've also got Dr. Moreau running around and a whole load of others. And it was amazing. Not to mention also the fact that they team up with Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, which just spoke to my Sherlock loving heart to no end. It was just fascinating and slightly horror-y without being too scary for my very weak heart, because quite frankly I'm no good with horror. But this was just sort of gory enough for me to deal with while also still being fascinating. It worked quite well with Sherlock and John as well, because they were really the only male characters in this story that were featured quite heavily. And while their characters weren't exactly like I always think of them, like in the BBC show, because obviously this is Victorian times and stuff like this, it was still so good to read about them, and all of these other characters was just amazing. It was filled with girl power, loads of intrigue. Absolutely loved it. 5-star read. I'm definitely reading the next one without doubt. I then went completely out of my comfort zone, if I'm honest, and read In the Time We Lost by Carrie Hope Fletcher. Now, Obviously, I have read Carrie's other books. I know what they're like. They are essentially magical realism with contemporary romance. And I like the magical realism side, but contemporary romance is not my thing usually. But this one, I really, really enjoyed. I could not put it down. And I know I usually say this because I am a Carrie fan, but I have to say this is definitely my favourite one of hers. I love the ending. It was not the ending I was expecting it to have, but I love that about the ending. And everything about this was just utterly fascinating. I couldn't put it down, and it was definitely another 5-star read for me, which really shocked me because while I usually enjoy Carrie's books, I'm usually a bit like, romance. But this one really, really grabbed me, I have to say. I then went on to Lock and Key Volume 2, and this one was really weird. I have no other way to describe it apart from really, really, really weird, quite frankly, and I'm not entirely sure if I enjoyed it. I think what happened was that I forgot 90% of what happened in the first one, so then I was kind of playing catch up, trying to remember everything while reading the second one, so I don't think that helped, and it was rather weird. Obviously it is a horror novel, so that was completely out of my comfort zone as well, but I have to say I did still reasonably enjoy it once I sort of remembered everything about this world, and I gave it 3 stars. I then went on to The Steel Prince Volume 2, The Knight of Knives by V.E. Schwab, and obviously I love her. Quite frankly, I love this comic, I love her, I am entirely biased towards it like I am with anything the Fletchers write, but this was awesome. This was amazing. I do feel like I really badly need to reread the Shades of Magic series because, quite frankly, I've forgotten 90% of what actually the world is all about because it's been a while, but I still thoroughly enjoyed these comics. I love seeing all about King Maresh when he was a prince and how he got those names and what he did to earn his reputation and everything. I find it fascinating, and again, it was a 5-star read. I then went on to Clockwork Princess, which took me a while to read, admittedly, because I did put it down for like 2 weeks, but went back to it and basically blasted through the last 200 pages in like 2 days, which isn't too bad because I was a bit iffy, I have to say, going into this one, because obviously I knew that this was going to be very much love triangle based and everything, and I had heard that the first half of this book was entirely love triangle, but it wasn't actually too bad. It didn't annoy me too much like I thought it would, so that was fun. I also enjoyed the storyline around the love triangle. I loved seeing exactly what Tessa was and the truth about Tessa herself. I loved Jem's ending. I loved Will's ending because he eventually died, and quite frankly I was really hoping for that because I'm just not a fan of Will whatsoever. Quite frankly, he annoyed me for 90% of this book, but I got over it because I love the rest of the storyline and the rest of the characters. I just really, really enjoyed this one, essentially. Generally, though, I do think I prefer the Mortal Instruments, but I think that's mostly because I just do better with modern-based stuff, I think. So, in that sense, this was good. I prefer the Mortal Instruments, but I still gave them 4 stars. And then I went on to Watchmen. Let's just say I didn't enjoy The Watchmen. I DNF'd it, quite frankly, because I just hated it. I can't lie to you. I hated The Watchmen. I was really, really excited to read it, obviously, because it's such a cult classic comic and everything else. I was going to watch the TV show, I was going to watch the film, I was going to get really, really into it. I was sure I was going to love it, but I didn't, quite frankly. I can't lie, because Watchmen the comic had rape as a main storyline. It was incredibly sexist. The main character who died right at the beginning, and that's not a spoiler, the book's 30 years old, there's been a massive film, and it's literally in the first couple of pages and sparks off the storyline. The main character who dies is called the Comedian, and he was the rapist, and he also shot a Vietnamese woman in Vietnam during the Vietnam War and killed her because she was pregnant with his baby, and he was like, I don't want any ties to this place after I leave. And he is actually described as basically a Nazi, and we were supposed to feel sorry for him. No, quite frankly, I couldn't feel sorry for him. I couldn't bring myself to care about the fact that he had been murdered, and a couple of others have been bumped off, because quite frankly, all of them seemed quite horrible as characters. Rorschach just wasn't for me as a character whatsoever, at all. and because I just find that type of broody, should humanity be saved, everything is black and white kind of thing, really, really annoying. So I got 79 pages in and had to DNF, quite frankly, and I haven't watched the film. I'm probably not going to watch the film because it's based off that comic and I don't particularly want to read that. I watched the first episode of Watchmen, quite enjoyed myself, watched the second one and was like, nah, this isn't for me. So Watchmen, generally not for me, essentially. Just not for me. After I DNF'd Watchmen, I had to read another graphic novel that wasn't originally on my TBR, but I really badly wanted to read it because I just needed a comic I knew I would love, so I went back to my old favourites, the X-Men, and read Age of X. Now this one was amazing. It's now definitely up there with House of M and Marvel 1602. It hasn't beaten them, but it's now definitely up there with my favourite comics of all time. It was awesome because it's actually set after House of M. There's a bit of traffic in the middle that I haven't read yet because, quite frankly, the reading order's all over the place and I don't own everything, but I will hopefully buy them over the years when I'm not on book buying bangs. Anyway, so this one follows an alternate reality where the X-Men were never formed, so humans are trying to make the mutants extinct, and now it's just a couple of hundred of them left on basically a tiny island trying to fight for their lives every single day against humanity, and it was amazing. It was amazing to see what happens when Charles isn't around to help and you've just got Eric having to stand up to this, and what happens when Legion is one of the main characters who's really, really appreciated instead of just being, well, Legion, that they're all like, oh, it's him again, get rid of him kind of thing. So that was really, really interesting. I love seeing what happens when Logan is essentially given the X-Men cure, like the mutant cure, and basically made unable to heal or anything, and knowing that if he gets angry or uses his claws or anything like that, he will basically die. And the ramifications of it all was incredible. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I've been raving about it to anybody who will listen to me for a while since I read it. It was amazing, 5-star read. I really badly want to reread it. It had all of my faves, essentially. Well, 90% of my favourites in it. It went down a dark turn and everything, and the plot twist was incredible. Quite frankly, it was amazing. It's definitely one of my favourite comics I've read this year, without doubt. It was incredible. And then the final book I picked up was The Diviners, and unfortunately I DNF'd it because, quite frankly, I just couldn't get along with it. I couldn't get along with the slang, which I found very, very confusing for 90% of the book. I also didn't get along with the main character because I found her quite unsympathetic, quite frankly. Maybe she changed throughout the series, but for me, I couldn't really get along with her. And also, I just found the book quite slow because I got to 99 pages and we'd only just gone to our first murder, and I was a bit like, I want things, I'm impatient. I have to say, I am an impatient reader and I don't really do slow build-ups or anything. I like being chucked in the middle of the action. So for me, it was a bit of a fail. But I will probably come back to this eventually when I'm in a bit more of a mood for slow books, when I know exactly what I'm getting into, but for now, it just wasn't for me. And that is absolutely everything I read in October, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give me a thumbs up, comment down below with what you read, I'd love to know. I'll also leave a link down below to all of my social media if you want to check it out. And if you want to see any more of my videos, please click subscribe here, and over here will be the link to my previous video. But until next time, guys, bye!